All right, I've been doing these interviews for a couple weeks now. They've been going really well. I've been getting great feedback. And I'm excited today to be interviewing another podcast host from the Mentee podcast who talks a lot about his transition from being an employee to being an entrepreneur and the mindset shifts that are kind of ingrained in that and the things that he's having to learn along the way and really following this path of the Jim Rohn quote, which is you are the average of the five people that you spend the most time with. So his podcast is geared towards spending time with those top five people that he's trying to move towards. So I'm excited today to have with me Geoff Woods. Oh,
Hey, Mike,
let me
thanks for
get
having me.
your picture up there with your caption. There we go. All right. I'm
What's
still
up,
getting used to
everyone?
this video switching. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm awesome, man. How are you?
I'm great. And so you reached out to me about appearing on the show, and we've kind of been going back and forth a little bit. Had to reschedule a couple times, but finally got together here, and I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me. I'm excited to be with you and your audience.
Are you out on the West Coast?
Yes,
So
South Orange County.
warmer weather out there?
Yeah, it was 75 yesterday. Not a cloud in the
Awesome.
sky.
It's
Looking
starting to
outside
warm up
right
out
now.
here.
Very cool.
So you are kind of documenting your transition from being an employee to being an entrepreneur, and this is the
Yeah.
nature of your podcast, right?
Yes, and just to give the audience a little bit of context, I don't pretend to be some business guru. I'm really like you. I'm a guy who wants to provide a great life for my family, and I'm going through the process just like you. But in the meantime, I've found some specific things that have allowed me to accelerate my progress so fast that I felt compelled to launch a podcast and share it with other people. And my story is I'm a medical device salesman. So I wear scrubs every day. I'm running in and out of hospitals, working with doctors, and it's a job I love. And frankly, I thought I was going to do it forever. Just save my money, invest it in real estate, and ride off into the sunset. But at the end of 2013, something happened where one of my colleagues, 35 years old, had a stroke. And here I am thinking, holy crap, life has been so good. I thought this was going to go on forever. But what would happen to my wife and to my daughter if something happened to me like that? What if I couldn't work anymore? And I realized that I needed to have some passive income in my life. And the very next week, the universe has a very interesting way of working. My company made a change to my commission plan. And even though I sold more in 2014 than I sold in 2013, I made 40% less. So those two things combined create a burning fire to start something on the side so that I can have enough passive income to pay for my lifestyle, and I can do my medical device job because I love it if I choose to. And then I heard the Jim Rohn quote that you mentioned, Mike, which is you're the average of the five people you spend the most time with. And I looked at who those five people were. And is it okay if I make this interactive with your following?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, guys, I want you to play all out here because it's not about just listening to this or watching this. It's about what you actually take action on. So let's do something right now. Who are those five people that you actually spend the most time with right now? Think about them. It could be your wife, it could be your boss, it could be your best friend, it could be your neighbor, it could be anyone. But who are those five people that you actually spend the most time with? And what you'll probably realize as you identify these people is that in terms of mindset, you guys are the same. In terms of average income, you guys are all pretty close. And what I realized was that if I wanted to suddenly have a certain level of passive income a year, I needed to be surrounding myself with people who had that type of passive income. If I wanted to be a business owner, I needed to be surrounding myself with business owners. And to clarify, I still have all the relationships, those original five people, they're all in my life. They're all still amazing friends, and I'm very close to them. But in terms of who I seek counsel from on how to start a business, I have made a change in who those five people were. And to give you some context, and I don't share this to brag, I'm very humbled by the people that are in my life now. But one of the guys, if you ever watched the movie Jerry Maguire, he was the CEO of that sports agency for many, many years. One of the guys started the Make-A-Wish Foundation. These are some very heavy-hitting business people that are suddenly in my corner that I have direct access to, who are guiding me. And the message is that you guys can have those types of influential, heavy-hitting mentors in your life as well, and that's what we're going to get into today.
Yeah, and I mean, as you talk through that, it's kind of the journey of a lot of entrepreneurs. I think we start our businesses because a lot of times because get laid off from a job, or something changes in the job, or we find out we don't have the stability that we thought we had, or we just want more freedom, or we see how somebody else is running the company and think we can do the same just as well. And so there's a lot of times a catalyzing event that pushes to that. But you're exactly right. Is most of us don't grow up with parents who are entrepreneurs, so we don't have family members a lot of times who are business owners. And if we had been employees, most of our friends are also employees at companies. In fact, despite the unemployment, most people still are employees, and they don't have the same mindset. You can't go to your friends and say, "Hey, what do you think of this business idea?" If they could
Yep.
judge that business idea as a business owner, they would be business owners. It would be a completely different situation.
I had an interesting conversation the other day with my friend Jeff Hoffman. He was on the founding team of Priceline.com, and I actually just did an interview with him and I released it. He was talking about the golfer. And he goes, "Have I ever told you the story about the golfer and his golf swing?" And I said, "No." He goes, "It's like the golfer who's trying to get better with his golf swing. He's trying to make all these adjustments, and he's talking to all his buddies about the adjustments that he can make in his swing. But there's one problem. The guys that he was asking were all baseball players. So if you want to improve your golf swing, go talk to golfers about the subtle adjustments that you need to make versus talking to baseball players about the ways that you should be adjusting your swing."
Yeah,
Does that make sense,
I
Mike?
think that's a great analogy, and it kind of takes the like personal elements out of it, because these people are still your friends, and their opinions are valid. They just don't have the same perspective on entrepreneurship. So it's not to say like you can't speak into my life because I don't value you. It's just you don't have the perspective I need to get where I want to go. And I think that analogy is perfect.
One of my mentors said something that resonated so deeply with me, and he heard this from one of his mentors. The difference between the most successful people and those who do not succeed is successful people seek counsel, where other people seek opinion.
Yeah.
Opinion is based on the advice that's given to you by people who maybe haven't experienced it, who maybe are ignorant to all the truths about what you're talking about. Opinion is based on actual experience. So if you want to find out how to do something, go seek counsel from those who have actually done it before.
Absolutely. I love that distinction. And as we were chatting before this interview, you asked, who my audience is. And a lot of times I talk about like emotional trauma and entrepreneurship because of the way I see it, it's kind of a unique challenge that to be an entrepreneur, you have to have kind of an innate trust in yourself and an innate trust that everything is ultimately going to be okay. But if you've experienced abuse or bullying or divorce or alcoholism or something like that, a lot of times you can have this perspective of a time when things like really actually weren't okay, but we carry that forward. And this idea of mindset seemed to kind of like catch your attention. So what are we really looking at here when we're talking about this entrepreneurial mindset?
Well, one of the things that I've gotten so interested in is the brain. And you've got the conscious brain, which are the thoughts that we're actually aware of, but that's only like the tip of the iceberg. Beneath that is the subconscious mind, which is about, I'm going to throw a percentage out there, and it's not based on any fact, but 85% will say of your thoughts are actually done in the subconscious or the unconscious mind. Have you ever gotten into this, Mike?
On the podcast or personally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you ever
Yeah, I mean, I end up talking a lot about how the issue is that we kind of learn from all of our experiences how to react in different situations. And if we're in a situation that we're learning unhealthy behaviors, if we learn that we need to protect ourselves, if we learn that our value is dependent on other people, we can learn all these lessons that in context as children are perfectly reasonable, maybe even make sense, but then as adults no longer serve us. Those are the things that we kind of need to go back and excavate and uncover and relearn. I think we all have all the tools in our emotional toolbox that we need to be successful and courageous and authentic and connect with people and trust each other and trust ourselves and all these things, but we just don't always learn how to use all the tools that we've got available to us.
Right. Have you ever gotten specifically into the concept of the conscious mind and the subconscious mind?
I mean, I guess I would say I think so, but where do you want to go with it?
Okay, I just wanted to have some context in terms of what your listeners may or may not know. So there are many things that we do consciously. Like if I say snap your fingers,
Mhm.
that was a conscious action. I consciously thought I need to snap my fingers, and I snap my fingers. Versus the fact that I'm breathing right now. That is an unconscious action. There are all these things that happen, from our heart rate to different things that we do when we move our hands or when we drive. There are just certain things that happen unconsciously. And as you started talking about traumas, it really triggered something in me, because all of us, these really impressionable years when you're around the age of 8, whatever has happened to you, there are certain things that have gotten programmed into your brain, that get programmed in there very deeply. And then you've lived however many years, 20, 30, 40 years since that time, with your brain firing in those types of ways. You with me so far, Mike?
Absolutely.
So when we start talking about traumas or negative things that may have happened in our lives, and I've seen this happen in my life or in some of my close relationships with other people, where they have certain beliefs, I'll call them limiting beliefs, that they may have because of something that's happened so long ago, and then they've just reinforced it time and time again. So we start talking about what it means to dive in and really unpack what's holding you back. And we all have this really interesting thing, this thermometer, I'll call it, called how do we feel? And it's really important, because I don't think people often are hyper aware of how they're feeling in this moment. How are you feeling, Mike? Are you happy? What are you feeling?
Yeah, it's I love that this is coming up, because I've really gone through a shift very recently, in fact, just a couple days ago, where I really felt like my kind of fundamental orientation shifted from predominantly fundamentally negative to predominantly fundamentally positive. And I felt like in the past, I was still so like geared towards thinking about the fear and anxiety and self-doubt and all that stuff, that even if I was like 49, 51% right on that edge, my tendency still was to feel negative. But I really feel positive and optimistic, and I feel good about the direction that I'm on. I feel really good right now.
Is it okay if I dive into you a little bit here?
I feel like I'm taking a risk, but I'm up for it. Let's go.
What changed that helped you go from feeling predominantly negative to feeling predominantly
It
positive?
really was just a core realization that everything really is just fundamentally okay. I'm not at risk. Even if things don't go my way, that doesn't mean I'm a failure or I'm never going to have what I want, which I wouldn't say ever was like a conscious thought in the past. It was just kind of like how I looked at the world. But more recently, I've really come around to this sense that like I have a lot to offer. Things are actually going to go really well for me. There's almost no way that everything can't work out for the best.
So I'd like to leave your audience with some actionable steps that they can actually take, so they can take away, walking away from this interview and feel like they can do something with it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So for you guys, I mean, I'm listening to Mike and I can see his energy, like it's super positive, and he's got this big smile on his face, and it makes me smile super big, but he wasn't always like that. And for you, what I'd like you to do is, for the rest of this day, be aware of how you feel. Ask yourself at random intervals, how am I feeling? When you enter a conversation with someone, how does this conversation make me feel? When you're listening to a song on the radio, how does this make me feel? When you have a certain thought in your head, how does this make me feel? And just be aware, does it make you feel good, or does it make you feel not good? When something doesn't make you feel good, you start to carry this energy, and it begins to spill into all the aspects of your life. And when you practice carrying that negative energy time and time and time again, ultimately you become a negative person. And that's what I was talking about with these traumas when something happens to you early in your life, when you're 8 years old or so. And then you continue to carry that with you year after year after year. What was originally a very superficial experience becomes deeply ingrained in your subconscious and your unconscious mind. So how do you change it? Well, step one is just being aware of how you're feeling.
And
So what I have done is in the times when I am not feeling good, for whatever reason, and I recognize it, I want to shift my energy. So how do you shift your energy? I think this is where it comes down to gratitude. Gratitude is one of the most powerful forces out there. No matter what is happening in your life, there's always a little silver lining that you can be grateful for. And how can you identify a few of those? And one of the challenges I've given to some of the people that I've mentored or coached is just an exercise. When you wake up in the morning, write down 3 things you're grateful for. It can be as simple as, I'm grateful for the fact that I'm going to have breakfast with my family this morning. I'm grateful for the fact that I'm looking outside right now and there's not a cloud in the sky. I'm grateful for the fact that there's technology and I'm able to have this conversation with Mike and actually spread this message to all of you. And while I said those things, I felt a fundamental shift in my energy. So I encourage you guys to start practicing gratitude and start thinking of 3 things, your 3 happy thoughts, if you will, that make you so happy. It could be the laugh of your child. It could be the time you won a championship in a sport in high school. Think of some 3 go-to actions or 3 go-to memories that were the highlights of your life. And in those moments when you do not feel good, immediately start thinking about those deeply. Visualize them. Feel like you're in that moment again, and your energy will shift.
so let's tie this together, Geoff, because I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Like, this is a pretty simple concept, but it's really very fundamental to kind of the nature of how we work and the importance of mindset, because we talked about the difference between the conscious and the unconscious mind. We talked about being aware of how you feel and then what we can do to change that. So the few things that jump out to me are, you brought up the idea of breathing and how breathing is an automatic behavior that's managed by the subconscious mind. The interesting thing about breathing is it's the one bodily function that we have both unconscious control and conscious control over, and we can actually use it as a tool to implement change in other areas of our body. We can consciously slow our breathing to affect our heart rate and our body temperature. And I think this is kind of the role of gratitude also. Gratitude has automatic effect, but it's also something that we have conscious control over, which is what makes it such a powerful tool for shifting that negative mindset into a positive, or not mindset, but like a negative feeling or attitude into a more positive attitude. And with respect to the idea of the awareness, I guess I would add that our natural state is to be happy and healthy. That's what our bodies are made for. And if we can recognize that we're not, then there really is a cue there to look at like what's behind this. And then before I kick it back to you, the last thing I think I would add is that with respect to feeling good, or I'm sorry, if we recognize that we're feeling bad, one tendency that we can have is to kind of judge ourselves for that negative feeling and say, what's wrong with me for feeling this way? And why can't I just be happy? And I think that's kind of the trap that's on the other side of gratitude. So how do we like tie this all together? Where do you want to go from here?
Well, here's one thing I want to add to this. You just mentioned when something happens, how we may beat ourselves up. Everything happens for a reason. And if you can truly believe that, it can fundamentally shift your life. So when I talk about gratitude, when something bad happens to you, I mean, Mike, can we use you as an example?
Well, can we use you as an example?
Okay.
Was there a time in your life when you had to really like learn this for yourself, that you
Sure.
kind of felt like this was missing, and this was kind of the key takeaway? How did you learn how important this was?
Sure. I'll talk about it. Something that's pretty vulnerable, but I'll throw it out there just because I think it's what resonates. When my company made a change in my comp plan, and I ended up making 40% less every single month last year, I spent more than I made. And thank God I had an emergency fund. But I'm at the point right now where I've got about $5,000 left in the bank, less than 1 month's expenses. Like, we are in the red zone. We are pushing the emergency button. And every single month, as I see the bank account dwindle, you feel all those negative feelings popping up. You feel the stress as you pay every bill or when other things come up. It's very natural to feel negative. I realized that carrying that negative energy was not going to get me out of that situation. So I asked one simple question. What is the value from this situation that I am not seeing yet? What is the value from this situation that I'm not seeing? And when you open your mind up to the possibility that everything happens for a reason and that there is a lesson to be learned at every single moment that happens to you, you're able to find that silver lining. And what I realized was my wife and I, our spending habits had gotten out of control. We were living a lifestyle that was far too lavish, that we did not need. We had lost focus on the things that really mattered in life. And this humbled us. And I am so grateful that this has happened to us because we are building a foundation now, a foundation based on true values that will carry us forward as I grow this business and hit the type of income goals that I want to hit. We would have been crumbled if I had started making the type of money that I want to be making with the habits that I had before. I am so grateful that this has happened to me this last year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's a really great example, and I think it kind of demonstrates the difference between blame and responsibility. So it's easy to look at that circumstance and like you said, just, oh, woe is me, we're losing money. Why did my company make this stupid change and what are they doing to me? Versus taking responsibility for the things that you can control, which is your spending habits. And I went through the exact same transition in my technology business. The business was, we had a bad vendor relationship. We lost a ton of money. We were losing money every month. We were increasing debt. And finally we had to say, like, okay, well, we can fix this. We need to control our costs, which we hadn't been doing well before. We need to generate more revenue, which we hadn't been doing well enough before. And you're exactly right. The lesson in that negative experience is there's a lot that you have control over if you can take responsibility for it.
Absolutely. If you can change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change.
I love that quote.
I'll say that again. If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So look at whatever negative thing is happening in your life. And if you can change the way you look at it by simply asking the right questions, what's the value here? What positive thing am I not seeing right now? Ask whatever question you want so that you can look at the situation a little bit differently. Your entire reality shifts and you can start to practice this gratitude and it changes your life. It really does.
What's the argument against that, though, when somebody says, well, you can tell yourself whatever fairy tale you want, and if you just pretend everything's okay, doesn't mean everything's okay, so this doesn't really make any difference?
Well, I mean, let's be real. I still have $5,000 in the bank. We are still not okay financially. But the difference is what's going to get me out of this faster? Me continuing to beat myself up, freaking out about the fact that we're running out of money? Or me being grateful for the fact that this has happened to us, realizing that this happened for a reason and that I'm going to be a better person because of it. Who's the person you want on your team? You know, you want the person who has that can-do attitude, who has an optimistic vision for the path moving forward. And I mean, this is your life. You can't afford to not do this, frankly.
And psychologically, I think there's a real dynamic there that if you're stuck in that negativity and blaming the circumstances and just thinking about how bad everything is, you're just not going to see the opportunities that are there in front of you. Study after study on luck shows lucky people are only lucky because they think they're lucky. They're more open to those opportunities. It's strictly a shift in perspective. And I think that really goes to what you're talking about here, which is what's going to serve you better, continuing to stay in that negative side or to take the attitude that there's a lot that I can control and I'm going to take advantage of those things that I have that I can utilize.
Absolutely. And what you just said, I absolutely love about potential missed opportunities when you don't have the right mindset. Your brain is so powerful, and there's this thing called the reticular activating system. It's like your human Google machine. It's that thing that's constantly surveying the world and bringing certain specific things into your conscious awareness. It's like when you go out to shop for a specific type of car, all of a sudden you see that exact car on the road. Your brain is constantly surveying everything around you, but it's only bringing back to you consciously what is relevant to you. And what's relevant to you is what you think about. So when you think about negative things, what do you think your brain is going to pick up? It's going to pick up all the shortages, all the voids in your life. But when you are a person who can practice gratitude and realize that everything happens for a reason, there's always a lesson to be learned, your brain is constantly going to be looking for ways to prove that right. Does that make sense, Mike?
Absolutely. That's what our minds do, is they look for evidence to support what we already believe, which is part of why these kinds of changes are so difficult, because we'll look around and say, see, I was right about that. See, I was right about that too. It's a kind of a
Absolutely.
trick. So let's go back to where we started. What are you finding is the kind of fundamental shift between the mindset of an employee and the mindset of an entrepreneur?
Oh, I have never been asked that question. Here it is. Entrepreneurs solve problems. Entrepreneurs look out in the world and they ask the question, what problems exist today? What pain exists today in my market's mind? And then they have the conviction and the mindset to say, I can be that person to solve it. And they take action on it. Employees, and I'm not saying one is better than the other, because not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur, not everybody's meant to be an employee. But for those entrepreneurial people, and this is what has called me to it so much, is I just always felt something deep inside of me. Call it creativity, call it the need to make a bigger impact. I just needed to do something on my own. And I don't know what that is going to be in the long run still. But what I do know at this point is that I have found a unique ability to surround myself with some pretty amazing people and then be able to form deep relationships with them. And when you surround yourself with the right people, oh gosh, I mean, how fast you start to progress, it is absolutely insane.
Yeah, you mentioned creativity, and I think to me that's really what it comes down to, is when you're building a business, you're creating something from nothing that didn't exist. You just have this idea in your head and think, hey, I could make this. I could bring this into reality in the world, and then you just go do it. And I think to me that's really the distinguishing factor. I mean, I could have a job, but even at jobs, I was always frustrated because I want it done my way. and maybe
Right.
that's just I don't know. I don't know what that says about me, but just that creative element of it. And for a long time, I didn't even consider myself to be a creative person. And that was a big perspective shift that I had to undergo, is to say, like, this is my vision. I need to see what this looks like. They talk about with sculpting, that the artist sees the sculpture in the wood before he strips away all the extra pieces. And I think that's what I really needed to learn about business to feel like I was building something successfully.
I like that you said that. It just resonates with me.
Yeah, cool. And sales, I don't know how much, like, sales is almost kind of close to entrepreneurship, because you're much more connected with generating your pay is more directly tied to the revenue that you bring in. And I think that's a big piece of entrepreneurship that a lot of people struggle with, is they'll start a business and think of it like a job and just think, well, as long as I do this thing, I'm going to get paid for it. But that's frequently not the case.
Right. The way that I would relate it is in sales, when I approach a hospital, I look at a hospital and I ask, what's the opportunity here? Who and here's, okay, so I have this grand vision of the potential sale that could occur. Okay, how do I need to make that happen? And I work backwards. Who are the people that need to be involved? How do I get in front of those people? I mean, you're constantly identifying a vision and putting in a plan to execute. And as you follow that plan, things happen. and you are consistently making adjustments and realigning yourself until you get to that goal. And that is entrepreneurship. You are getting out there, you're identifying a problem or a pain, and hopefully, well, key right there, there's a tip right there. Start with the problem or the pain. So many people start with, hey, I have this app idea. You're already off to a bad start. You need to start by finding a pain, a problem that you're going to solve. And once you have that vision for how you can solve it, putting that plan into place and executing it.
So a lot of entrepreneurship and sales is about connecting with people, and I mean, connecting with people is kind of what we're made to do. But a lot of people struggle with that, and they hold back, and they're trying to protect themselves, and they don't want to get the no's, so they dance around it and all this stuff. And I'm sure you in sales have a lot of experience and education and training and talking points about these things. What to you sets you up so well to connect with people? Like, where does that skill come from for you?
Sure. And this is something that can be learned by anyone. I really believe that. And if for any of you who are listening to this saying, no, I'm an introvert, or for whatever reason, if that shuts you down at all, I'm not saying that you have to be this big, gregarious, lively, energetic person. That's not what makes people connect. People like themselves. I'll say that again. People like themselves. The sweetest sound to any person is the sound of their own name. So what I'm getting to here is it's not about you. It's about them. And as soon as you can realize the importance and the power of making it about them and not you, that's how you connect with people. So often, and I have been this person for many, many years, in a conversation, I would talk about myself. I talk about all the things that were going on in my life. And why? Because it made me feel good. It feels good to talk about yourself. It feels good to fluff yourself up a little bit. But when a person has ever, if you've ever been in a conversation where another person just talked at you constantly, you shut down. You stopped listening. Maybe you were polite and you let them go, or maybe you just flat out said, dude, zip it.
So how do we balance this with the idea that, like, in our business, we are the unique thing? People are going to be drawn to us because, and especially in podcasting, people are drawn to your personality, to your message, to the way that you speak and how that resonates with them. So how do we balance this idea that you need to be comfortable and clear and confident with who you are and be able to speak to that, but it's really about this model of connection that you just laid out?
Sure. Well, step one is really just realizing that you need to stand in your own power. You need to recognize your value and realize that that will come out to your customer or prospect over time. But the thing that is going to set you apart, the thing that is going to make that person feel connection with you, is by making it about them right off the bat. And here's one way to do that. When you meet someone and you shake their hand, to ask them, what's exciting in your business right now? That's a question almost nobody answers. And I mean, Mike, can we role play this?
All right, let's do it.
All right. So what is exciting in your business right now?
I mean, to me, a lot of my business has been about personal development, and to be able to see the things that I'm talking about come to pass in my life individually, I think has been really exciting.
So tell me more about that. That sounds really cool.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of what I talk about on my podcast. And to me, the power of sharing the journey that I'm going through is that I know other people are going through that same journey. And my hope is just that they hear something in that resonates, and they get value from that.
Have you had a specific example of where that's happened?
Yeah, I mean, the more I think I feel comfortable and true to my message, the more I get email responses from people, the more engagement I get on social media, the more people who I know in real life reach out to me and say, hey, I heard you talk about this, and that really resonated with me, and I appreciate that. And so I'm definitely seeing that play out.
That must be really rewarding.
It is.
Cool. And where, everything that you're doing, where do you need help most right now? What's the one thing you need help with right now?
So in real life, I think it's probably converting this into an actual business. And I've just started, promoting my coaching services again and talking about the growing the audience of the podcast and getting comfortable like reaching out to people for help in some of those things. And so that's been pretty valuable to me. And I think that's the area that I'm definitely looking at the most and am the most open to receiving help now.
Okay. And if there was one thing specifically you had to prioritize all that you needed the most help with, what would it be?
I Wow, I don't know. I feel like I guess I'm going to go with just solidifying like the structure of what all these different parts of the business look like to make it coherent.
Mm.
Did I just buy
Do you
something, or is that where we're going?
No, but what I'm thinking right now is A, can I help you directly? Or B, who in my network do I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
who
yeah.
has already done that, who I can connect you with? Would
Right.
that be helpful?
It would be. So what are we demonstrating here?
Yeah. So, and I'm sorry, guys, it took a little longer there, but the whole point was I made it about Mike. I asked him what's exciting in his business, and there's a reason I use the word exciting, because when people start talking about what's exciting in their life, they start to feel good. And they're feeling good because of a conversation with you. So that anchors that positive feeling to you. Then I started to ask him to go deeper into that. Tell me more about that. Tell me about a specific experience with that. I want him to feel those positive emotions, and I want them to be associated with me. And then I position myself as a person of value by saying, what's the one thing that you need help with right now? How can I be of contribution in your life? And here's the thing. When you start to network with some heavy hitters, you may think, how can I add value to this person's life? How can I add value to a Fortune 100 CEO's life? They are light years ahead of me in business. Bottom line is, just by asking that question sets you apart. And here's the key. What I said to Mike at the end is, hey, I'm trying to think, can I help you directly? And if I can't, who can I connect you with? I'm going to scout for you. That positions you as a person of value. And that whole time, that whole conversation, I felt a connection with Mike because I'm genuinely interested in what's going on with him. And as I see him, his passion come out, that jacks me up. I'm excited by that, and I want to help him. That's sincere.
And I
But that
think
was all about him.
I think that interest in the genuine interest in the other person really is the central thing that I try to get out on this show. I think if you struggle with emotional health, it's really difficult to really be genuinely interested in the other person because you're at some level worried about protecting yourself and am I going to be okay and am I going to get what I need? And this really goes to the whole idea behind like act like you don't need the sale and all that kind of sales advice. It's if you're really genuinely interested in helping the other person, this is the kind of conversation you can have, and it's going to be genuine and authentic and helpful for both parties because you're not just thinking like, oh, well, but how am I going to close this and what am I going to get out of this? You know
Right.
that that's what it leads to.
Right. And Zig Ziglar had a great quote, which is, you can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want first. If you can shift your mindset, instead of being that hunter mentality where you're going into a networking meeting to get yours and to make a connection, and shift to just simply hoping to make a connection with people and to find the one thing that that person needs, to identify that and to let them know that A, you will help them directly, or B, you'll scout for them. And as you continue to network, you'll keep them in mind. And if you come across somebody who can potentially make that connection, you'll do so.
So was that skill always natural for you? Is that something that you
Nope.
just learned through practice, or is that something that you really had to like come to on your own?
This is where we bring it back to the power of the 5 people you spend the most time with. When I shifted those people, when I started attracting the mentors into my life that I have now, I suddenly realized that all of them did this. Every single one of them. And they're all, not that this is the true value of success, but they're all making 7 figures. They all have time freedom. They all, they're living the life they want to live. Why is it that the most successful people all do this? It just stood out to me, and I realized that it's something that I needed to embody myself.
But you were
And
already in sales. You already we're a sales
Sure,
professional. What
sure.
did
But
that shift for you?
I went in with an agenda. I used to go in with an agenda of, hey, I'm going to get this process, I'm going to get in front of this person and I'm going to push this product and I'm going to try to build the pain and try to close the sale. And I did it in networking where I went in with an agenda. I had specific asks, specific things that I wanted from people. When I was having a conversation, I'd be looking over their shoulder to see if there was anybody else in the room who was more important for me to be talking to. I felt like a hunter.
Hmm.
And it wasn't, and literally that was 6 months ago that I did this. And 6 months ago, I really got these core group of people in my life and I learned to stand in my power and just realized that if I became that person whose sole purpose was adding value to your life, that things would come to me. And they have.
So how have you experienced that?
Well, when you say experience that, like how have things come to me?
Well, you said this kind of shift in perspective happened about 6 months ago, and these things
Mhm.
that now that you're standing in your power, the things that you want are starting to come to you more. Like how do you see that in your actual real life?
First, there's the way that I feel. I have such less anxiety when I'm interacting with people because I don't have an agenda. My only purpose in that conversation is to connect with that person and see if there's a way I can help them. And when you truly feel that at your core, oh, it's liberating and infinitely powerful. When you have the power to help people, it is unlike anything else. So that's just on the emotional how I feel side, but I also noticed the quality of my relationships getting much deeper. I noticed more people coming to me because other people talked about me. Hey, you're that guy. And the people that were being attracted into my life, it just started happening faster. And then more opportunities presented itself. I'll use one example. I did this with one of my now mentors. His name's Dave. And Dave is a real estate guy. He's done probably 10,000 transactions. He's very, very, very successful in real estate. And I approached him because I wanted to learn about real estate. But I made it about him the whole time. For the first 4 months or so, it was all about me just learning from him, no agenda whatsoever. And once we formed a relationship that was deep enough, I was able to take a partnership with him and jump into some commercial real estate transactions that I would never have the opportunity to jump in simply because I first started out being interested in him and trying to find ways to add value to him. Does that make sense, Mike?
It does, and I think this really gets to the core with what a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, because I'll talk to entrepreneurs who feel like they're not connecting with people in their marketing, they're not closing the sales that they want, they're not attracting the new business that they want, they're not getting the referrals that they want. And over again, it'll be because they're going in with this message of like, I have to sell this so that I can pay my mortgage next month. Like, well,
Mm.
that's not serving the other person. That's not connecting with the other person. What's your actual message to them? So how do we help people start to understand from where they are now, from operating out of scarcity and lack and the fear, and I have to be able to sell this so that I can be successful, to just connecting with the other person and knowing that all that other stuff is going to be okay.
Take action, guys. You got to take action. I said at the beginning of this podcast, I don't care how many podcasts you listen to, you've got to take action on what you're hearing. So I don't expect any of you to walk away from this all of a sudden being a person who's practicing gratitude and adding value to everybody's life consistently. But today, I challenge you to go out and have a conversation with somebody, make it about them. Ask them what they're working on. Ask them where they need help and tell them that you want to help them. And if you can't help them directly, you'll reach out to your network and see if you can make connections for them. Try it once. See how it feels. See how that person reacts. If you like what you see, do it again. If you don't, throw it away and, never do it again. But the bottom line is try it for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and to tie it back to what we had talked about before, if you pay attention to how you feel, you'll get that feedback. You'll know, like, am I comfortable just not worrying about, connecting with what they want, or am I still fearful about not getting what I want? You can feel that in your body. You'll recognize if that's there. And if it is there, that's when you like kind of take a step back and start looking more at the gratitude and all that stuff.
Yeah. I feel like we've covered so much, and I realize for the listeners, I know a lot of it has been pretty scattered, but if we can really bring it back to one thing in terms of just realizing how you feel and being aware of how everything you do makes you feel, and start doing the things that make you feel good. Not to say that, I mean, there are certainly things you have to do in life that maybe you don't feel good. And in those situations, I challenge you to look at it differently. Again, change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. What is the value? What is the lesson to be learned in that situation? What is that silver lining? What is the opportunity that you're not seeing right now that might be right in front of you? Start thinking about those things and see how things change for you.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. I think there's no if you struggle with depression or anxiety or think something like that, it's really hard to imagine not feeling that. But that's kind of our tool at the same time for recognizing when something is wrong. We're not supposed to be in pain. If we feel pain, it's our body telling us there's something wrong. There's something that you need to look at. And it's really, I think a lot of people just kind of like accept that. They assume that that's normal. This is the baseline and everything goes up or down from here, but that doesn't have to be the case.
If I can share, you just struck a chord with me. If I can share one thing with your listeners right now, I'm a very positive person. I am always upbeat. I am always energized. I have 2 speeds, fast forward and off. And yesterday, I was feeling depressed, which is a word that I don't know if I've ever used for myself. But I was feeling depressed. And I came home and I'm talking to my wife, and I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake it. And as I sat down on the couch, and then I went and laid down in the bed, and I tried to shift my energy and practice all the things I'm grateful for, I still found myself not being able to shake it. What finally broke it was when I just said, you know what, enough's enough, Geoff. You have to take action. We have to go do something to make you feel good. And I sat down in my office and I just started setting a bunch of appointments for my business. And I started getting into a rhythm. And all of a sudden I started feeling good. And then I started setting more appointments and more until, an hour and a half later, I had gotten so much work done and I was feeling freaking fantastic. So the moral of the story here is, when you don't feel good, take action. Do something to shift your energy. Do something productive, and see if that changes anything for you. I don't know if it will for everybody, but it certainly did for me yesterday, and I had to share that with you guys.
Yeah, and I found that as I was like kind of coming out of my own depression, the times when I would focus on other people, go have conversations, go meet with people, engage with people online, that's when I stopped worrying about myself and worried more about them and felt better about myself, because we're made to connect with other people. That's what's going to resolve this for us. If we feel like we have to protect ourselves, that's always going to be in the way. So I love it.
And if I can add one last thing for you guys, pay attention to who those people are, who those 5 people are in your life. Because if you're going through anything, whether it's depression or trauma, are you surrounding yourself with other people who maybe like to go to the pity party with you? Or are you surrounding yourself with people who are living the life you want to be living? And that's so important. Who you hang out with affects everything in your life. So if you're not happy with the way your life is right now, I challenge you to identify what it is that you do want, and then go out and find those people. Is it okay if I share a gift with your audience, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Geoff.
Awesome. So, I didn't want to get into this whole thing today because that's not the purpose of this podcast, but I have outlined the actual steps that I took to change who those 5 people were in my life. And I put them into a PDF for you guys. And if you go to www.mentepodcast.com/gift, just mentee, MENTEE, podcast.com/gift, it's right there for you guys. I'm just trying to help you.
Yeah, and this benefit of connecting with people is something that I've found from doing these interviews, because I'm talking to people like you and a lot of other successful entrepreneurs and coaches and podcasters. And that's been the connecting with those people has been, to me personally, the most valuable part of doing these interviews. And this is kind of the path that you're on with your mentee podcast also, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
And
where's that podcast taking you?
I don't know yet. What the idea of the podcast is to document my journey from employee to entrepreneur and highlight the conversations with the mentors that are guiding me. And I just realized that I started running with some pretty heavy hitters. And if I could press record on those conversations and share them with everybody, that would be incredibly valuable, because their counsel is accelerating my progress so fast. Why can't it accelerate yours if you get to hear the exact same conversation? In the process, I'm starting to survey, what is it that my audience wants? What pain are they going through? And I'm interested in hearing, where do you guys need help?
And
I
so
want to know.
this is really going to speak to people who are employees looking to make that shift to entrepreneurship. And I also imagine a lot of people who are new to entrepreneurship, or maybe even have been at it for a couple of years but are struggling a little bit, because they're going to hear that mindset and that feedback from the people who are established that you're talking to and doing your interviews with.
Exactly.
What's been the biggest surprise to you along the way?
The biggest surprise. I'll give one feel good, and I'll give one not feel good.
Okay.
The feel good one is how infinite, the infinite possibilities that are out there. I mean, with technology today, with the internet, the ability to do a podcast, it is amazing how much stuff has been attracted to me because of it. I just, right before this, was interviewing Lee Cockrell. He was the executive vice president of operations for Disney. He's the guy who opened all the theme parks. He found me. He wanted to have a conversation with me because I had this podcast. That would have never happened. So, the people that are being attracted to me in my life because of it is really cool. I'm also shocked at the impact that it's having. I'm getting messages from people who are saying, hey, I couldn't shake whatever was happening in my life, and I realized it was those 5 people. And I followed that guide that I shared with you guys, and I've made those changes, and it's making a difference. That is so valuable. And even if I never make $1 from doing this, I mean, that's why I'm in. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. On the flip side, the not so feel good thing is how much time and effort goes into this. And I know you know this, Mike, but this is a lot. And balancing a full-time job, family, my own personal health, and launching a business. Interesting task.
Yeah, there again, I think another lesson that a lot of entrepreneurs aren't necessarily ready for, like a podcast. The thing that I've realized is it's about 20% actually creating the product and 80% promoting it and trying to get people to listen to it and all
right.
that. It's the same thing in our businesses. We think, well, I'll just start a business and this is what I do. But what you really do is try and find people to buy what you do. And that's going to take a lot more effort and time than doing the actual thing.
Right.
That's cool. So what's your where are you on this journey? Like, do you have a plan mapped out? Do you have goals to leave your job, to be established by a certain time? Like, where are you on it personally?
And I don't even know that leaving the day job is the plan, because I'm very happy there. But my goal is to have passive income at a certain level by the end of 2016, so that I can continue to do my medical device job because I love doing it, not because I have to do it. Make sense? So where I am right now, I have not monetized yet, but I am focusing on building the podcast and adding as much value as possible to my listeners and truly connecting with them, whether it's on the phone or via email, to find out where they need help. What's holding them back right now? And once I hear a pain that is consistent among my listeners and that is deep enough, that's where the business is.
And so part of this right now is really just developing the message, getting comfortable with where you are, connecting with the audience, building the community. A lot of the same things that I'm doing with this podcast. It's really cool. Exactly. It's a great way to approach it, especially have the ability to do that.
Yeah, yes.
How's I mean, has there been impact on your personal life going through this transition?
Sure. I mean, from a personal growth standpoint, I am being stretched more than ever, which is fantastic. In terms of life, the other personal life, which is life with my family, I have that much less time to spend with my family, which has forced me to get that much better at managing my time and making the moments that I do have count. So when I am with my wife, I'm with her with intention. When I am with my daughter, I am focused on her intensely. When I'm working on my medical device job, I am focused and I am executing as much as possible in a short period of time. And when I'm working on the podcast, same thing. I'm trying to focus on the absolute highest income and impact actions that will move my business forward.
And I hope everybody really can hear the benefit of that, because this is kind of my core message, is if you can stop worrying about your own agenda and your own fear and your own depression and anxiety and all of these things that you're worried about, and you can focus on the relationships and the things that are important in building your business and engaging with your family and engaging with your audience and all these other, there's a huge upside to that. There's no way that your life can't go better if you stop worrying about all your own stuff and start focusing on the things that are really important on the outside.
That's right.
I think we had an awesome interview with Geoff Woods from the Mentee Podcast. MenteePodcast.com/gift is where you can get the 5-step process that you talked about. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And anything else we need to know about you before we sign off here? Any final thoughts, closing comments?
No, I really encourage you guys to take action on something that you heard today. It's one thing to listen to this podcast, and Mike does a really great job. I love everything he's done here, and it's proof by all the reviews he has on iTunes. But take action. Otherwise, it's really not for anything.
I agree. Take action. So if your action today is to head over to menteepodcast.com/gift and download that report, that would be a great first step for everybody watching today. All right. You have a second to hang around, Geoff?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to sign off here. Get my video right. All right. This is another great interview. I continue to be blown away by the great content I get. I think I say that after every interview. I never know what to expect going in, and I'm never disappointed. These are amazing interviews. Thanks to Geoff for joining me today on the show. And until you and I speak again, be the person you want to be, build the business you want to build, and have the successful life you want to have.